Welcome to Transcendent Leadership. We bring together top leaders and experts to share their unfiltered truth about the journey to self-actualization and the path to heart-centered leadership. You'll hear raw lessons, learn ancient wisdom, and practical steps to rise to your fullest potential. Now is the time to walk into this new paradigm of leadership. Let's transcend together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another juicy episode of Transcendent Leadership. I have absolutely no doubt that this is going to be really enlivening and activating. I can already feel the palpable fire and energy, but also like this enriching water that really wants to drop in this elemental space, because we are here with my dear friend, soul sister, and master practitioner, Amy Natalie, who is a women's empowerment coach and feminine embodiment guide with over a decade of coaching experience. She specializes in helping women to emerge as the most authentic, confident, and self-expressed versions of themselves. Her mission is to ignite women into their feminine power so that they can live a life of freedom, pleasure, and purpose. As a community leader, Amy creates transformational spaces for women to experience radical healing and deep soul connection through her retreats, workshops, events, and coaching programs. Amy is the host of the Feminine Frequency podcast, which has over 500,000 downloads, 275 episodes, and reaches women from all over the globe. Amy's debut book, The Feminine Way, Reclaim Your Feminine Energy to Create a Life of Pleasure, Aliveness, and Vitality, will be launched on November 11th, 2023 of this year. Well, can you feel her power and magnetism already rising with us? Welcome to the show, Amy.
It is such a pleasure and joy to be here. I'm so excited to be in this space with you. And I've been listening to your podcast and loving everything that you've been sharing, and the energy and the essence of this body of work is so beautiful and so needed at this time. So it truly is an honor to be here with you and to be contributing and offering anything that wants to come through today, because I know both of us really lead from that place of intuition and staying open to divine wisdom. So really grateful to be here and excited to see what wants to come through. We never know.
For those of you who are watching the video on YouTube, I'm like just putting my fingers together, because there's like this, just when we come together, and I think when women come together, there's always this like surprising, just like boundless spaciousness for like all of the universe to like drop in and come through. And so it is going to be really interesting and exciting to see what comes through. And I would love to kind of start there. Something I've experienced and something that I continue to feel called to talk to clients and just have conversations around is women really coming together first. And I feel like there is this really big collective feminine rising. And I think one of the challenge and friction points with that is really healing the competition wound, and healing the part where we have been programmed to believe that we have to be like other women, or we have to look a certain way in order to be in our power. So can you just speak to your journey with that and what that's been like for you as you support women and leaders and you really help them through this process? I imagine there's been some journey within yourself. So would love to hear about that journey for you and what you're kind of noticing right now.
Yeah, I'll start big picture and then like zoom into my personal experience, because we are going through a really transformative time on the planet, and these ways of being of competition and comparison are outdated, patriarchal, toxic, masculine programs that have really been instilled into us. And we learn it in school, we learn it on the sports field, we learn it in the dance studio, which was a huge place where I learned it as well. And where we're separate from others, which is also the essence of the ego, right? Is separateness. and isolation. And so we do these things where we isolate, we judge, we compare, and those are outdated programs that are being rewritten as we speak. Like, even in this conversation, the fact that we're talking about this is part of this shift that's happening. And so we have moved into the age of Aquarius, and some of the values of Aquarius is community, collaboration, and really where each person brings their unique gifts to the table, and we all benefit from that. Versus, oh, I'm better than or worse than this other person, or they have more value to offer. It's really that we each have our own essence. And when we can really see that, we can see there's more than enough room at the table for all of us. And that's why I love even these types of podcasts, and why I have my own podcast is because I love highlighting other women's gifts. I love there, it isn't this thing of, oh my God, they're going to get more clients or they're going to be more successful. It's like, oh, okay, we all have something to contribute, and let's rise together. So that's the paradigm that I live in now, and that I really bring forward in my work with women. I do a lot of group work with women. And one of the most fascinating things with group work and bringing women together in community, whether it's at a new moon circle or at a retreat or a workshop, is that we start to see that we are so much more similar to one another than we ever thought. Our minds, especially with social media and with the way that we perceive people externally from the outside, it might look like everyone has it all put together. They don't struggle, they don't have their own challenges. But when we get into these intimate, sacred spaces and we really get to see each other, what we find is that we have so many similar struggles, right? Whether it's body image struggles or feeling unworthy or struggling with scarcity or feeling like struggling with relationship issues and anxious attachment or any of these things. Like, it's what makes us human. And when we can peel back that layer and really be seen and witnessed in that, we can dissolve the shame around it. When we hear other women speaking what's going on for them, we're like, oh, okay, we're a lot more similar than I thought. And that's where a lot of the deep healing can happen. So, my journey, I definitely did not have an easy time with relationships with other women growing up. I really struggled with that. I actually hung out with men a lot more often with boys at that time. I played a lot of sports, and I had a really hard time. I'm very sensitive. And at the same time, I had a really hard exterior with women, just like had a lot of separation and distance. And a lot of that was projecting my own insecurities and my own wounds onto other women. And it wasn't until I really started to come into a place of self-love and to really see my own value and my own worth when I was going through my own spiritual awakening journey that I started to see, oh, okay, like I don't need to be separate from these women. And the more authentic that I can be, the more real I can be, and where I don't have to guard and protect myself, but I really let them see me, the more magnetic I am. And it was like all of a sudden I started attracting women. It literally felt like women came out of the woodworks. I'm like, where have all these amazing women been all my life? Like, this is what I've been wanting, but I didn't know how to create this. And it was through coming into my authentic self and being my authentic self, and being really vulnerable at that time. I was going through a divorce and was like going through a huge identity shift, and just being really honest about the struggles with that. And so many women just showed up in support. And before I knew it, like I was hosting women's events and bringing women together in community and seeing these connections happen with other women too. So yeah, to say it's been a journey is real. And I would say that sisterhood is one of the things that I value the most in my life right now. Like, it brings me the most connection. It brings me just this sense of support and play, and just like a space where I can really be me and really be held in that. Yeah, it's so powerful when we get to that space.
Mm-hmm. It really shatters the structure around the boss babe archetype, who like, I do it alone, I've got it. And we're really seeing a lot of these structures like just absolutely crumble right before our eyes. And something that you touched on that I really want to reiterate is this idea of separateness, right? Like this person is better than me. Um, they are better looking than me, they're smarter, whatever. And I know that has come up for me. And still sometimes I'm like, ooh, that like the triggers the wound in me of like not feeling smart enough. That was like one of my
Mhm.
major core wounds. And I'm surrounded by so many brilliant, intelligent, like master healers and practitioners. It's like, wow, okay, like I wanted this, and now that it's here, it's really activating me. And the thing that's inherent underneath what you're saying too is the separateness of like all that is. So not even just from each other, but from all of life, from God, from the universe, and just recognizing that there is an inherent interconnectedness of all of it. And when we can see that, and when we can really tune into that, we can not only heal within ourselves, but be able to contribute our unique energetic signature to the world in such a way that there's this reciprocity of healing that happens. Like my healing is your healing, your success is my success, because we are all literally interconnected and come from the same source. It's not like the verbiage of like we are one, although we are. It's like we are cut from the same cloth, and we have different structures and different textures and different flavors. And I really feel like that is one of the most fundamental aspects of what this new earth, this new reality is that we're coming into, is really seeing the divinity and divine oneness within all of us, and how everyone's success and healing is all interconnected with each other, and like that natural ripple effect. And I want to explore this from a lens of leadership as well. Like how do these things, how have you seen your leadership, whether it be how you lead yourself, how you lead in your business, and also maybe how you allow yourself to receive leadership? Like how has your leadership changed from really healing the sister wound, from recognizing these areas of error in thinking and flawed thinking? Because also it's just not fundamentally true, right? It's like not even just programming. It's like this is just out of truth. This isn't even true. So yeah, walk us through what that feels like for you. Where does this weave and interconnect, and how has it actually practically in some ways shown up in your life?
Mhm. I would say that I wasn't in my leadership when that was the paradigm that was taking up so much of my energy and my thoughts. Like I would be sitting on like the sidelines technically, where it was like, oh, I saw all these people doing these amazing things, and I knew that I was passionate about being in service. I knew that I was passionate about supporting others, but because that paradigm of competition and comparison was coming up for me, I felt so small. And so I would procrastinate and I would self sabotage, and I would be like, oh, well, they're so much further along and I'm never going to get there. And so it was like this wishy washy showing up. I wasn't really showing up fully in my power. And it was through working some of this inner dialogue and really coming back to, okay, like I'm here for a reason and I have value to offer, and my value is different to the value that they have to offer. And no one else can do it in the way that I can do it. And no one else can do it in the way that they can do it. And the
Mm.
people who are meant to work with them are going to work with them. And the people who are meant to work with me are going to work with me. And, like that's just the reality of how it works. And the more that I could come into my own and see the value that I had to offer, the more that I could sit at the table and be part of the conversation. And in doing that, now I'm surrounded by some of the most brilliant, beautiful, incredible, inspiring women. Like I'm so lit up by my sisters. I'm so lit up by women who are showing up to be in service, and that we get to do it together and support each other and celebrate each other. That's such a huge thing that I work on with my clients and within my relationships too, is can we be in celebration of one another? Like not just support each other and be nice to each other, but can we really just like celebrate each other? And when we do that, it's like this activation that happens. So yeah. And then it really is everything, I think whether it's business or leadership, like this is something, and it's so interesting that this is coming through. Wow, I haven't thought of this for a long time. This is something that actually my grandfather used to say. So my last name is Pomensky, and my grandfather would say, you only have one name, right? And to me, that speaks to is like, people remember you. They remember how they feel about you, and the way that you show up and what you're embodying is what's going to be like reflected back in your world. And so I feel like this aspect of when we show up in our power and we're at the table and we're in leadership, it's like that's what drives authentic success, where people are like, yeah, I want to promote your book. Yeah, I want to have you on my podcast. Yeah, I want to like celebrate your success too. Right. So I feel like it's everything. I feel like having this sisterhood connection in all realms, not just in business and leadership, but in my personal life, is just elevates like my life experience.
You can feel it even when you're talking. There is like a frequency that you're literally holding and transmitting of like of absolute truth, right? Of just being in a space where I don't feel like there's like some people are like, oh yeah, I celebrate my sisters. And then the people who feel. I forget if it was like a Mother Teresa quote or something, but it's like you forget what people say, but you never forget how they make you feel. And that's like the
Mhm.
undercurrent of I feel like what you're saying as well, because it's embodied within you. And it's interesting. It's like pinging this curiosity around how does this translate for you, and how have you noticed that it supports you in engaging with the masculine, both within yourself and in relating with the masculine as well? How has this really shaped or helped you orient to, or have like an access point to anchor into, to show up in that way differently as well?
Mm. Yeah, I think when it comes to, and maybe we can talk about like the masculine in the realm of relationships. So it's like, instead of sourcing, well, I guess safety and security from outside of me, like first it gets to come from me and from God, from spirit, like my connection there. But also having these relationships with the women in my life, it like diversifies my needs that are being met in different places, right? It diversifies so it's not all having to be met in one place. And I think as feminine beings, like we always want more. We want more connection. We want more love. We want more play, more aliveness. And I think that that's what sisterhood can really offer. And similarly, like when we're with other women, I think there's a space where we can be raw and we can be authentic and we can process our emotions and be with each other in that and have a deep understanding for each other. And I think having that level of support, you know, life can be challenging sometimes,
Mhm.
relationships can be challenging sometimes. And so when you have that network and when you're surrounded by that type of support, it's like it allows me to show up in my romantic relationship even better. It allows me to show up in my business even better. And I think going back to what we were talking about before is like this separation and this isolation. Like we're not meant to do it alone. We're not meant to do life alone. So having that built-in community is huge for me. Yeah.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I'm thinking about all of the years that I've spent in relating to men and asking for them to hold like and be everything and all that I needed. Like be my best friend, be my lover, be my business partner, be everything. And how exhausting it was really for the men that I was in connection with or in relationship with. And similar to what you're saying, as soon as I started accessing community that was also co-ed, but also in sisterhood, really gave me the space to explore the parts of me that I didn't know how to show up in that one-on-one connection with a partner, and also act like have more resource and more reflection in a way where it just amplified my ability to show up in relationship, and all of my expectations around what a partner needed to provide for me. I was so fed in my sisterhood and I was so nourished there that it loosened so many of these expectations and hard aspects of rigidity around like, you need to be this for me. Like, oh my God, I like think back on that like younger one who was just uh putting so much weight and pressure on the masculine, on the ways that I was relating to men. And so yeah, I feel like what you're saying here is it really offloads the pressure for you as well as for the people in your life. Like everyone really shows up in a way where somebody can hop on a call with you or somebody can reflect something to you. And we think about our needs psychologically, we have a need for tribe, we have a need for community. So this like is no longer a conversation around this is a luxurious experience to have community. It's absolutely a necessity for you to be held in this way to actually function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think that is also part of what we're speaking into here of the feminine rising is like I think, I mean, whether it was through the pandemic or even before then, I mean, I was hosting women's circles before then, and women were literally so hungry for it. Like these events were sold out because there is this like deep yearning and deep desire for connection. And I think just with technology and the way that we live in our modern world, specifically in the United States, like we've lost a lot of that prioritization and the value of community. And it's coming back, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, you can feel it. And as soon as you said "Hey, women are hungry and we were talking about being fed, it automatically brings out this like this like ravenous feminine primal being who's like, I'm just so hungry for pleasure, for joy, for ecstasy, for more. And like that is the feminine, right? She's like almost insatiable, cannot be satiated. So what are you hungry for right now? What do you notice your clients are hungry for? And then how are they getting fed? Like what are some of the ways in which you're supporting them or you with really yeah, really being fed or nourished in a way that is beyond just like, oh, that's like community, but like what's at the core of what women are like really hungry for right now?
This is so good. I'm like feeling my body light up. I'm like, there's so much here. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's at the core is freedom, but freedom to be all of us as a feminine being, freedom to be your full feminine self, your full authentic self, freedom to be in your fullest expression, freedom to feel all your emotions and to be in your sensuality and to be free to, show up in your connected to your soul, like all these things that have been suppressed for so long in through different like religious programming and patriarchal programming that have been suppressed. I see that these are like rising to the surface. And because they've been repressed for so long, like that hunger and that yearning is there of like, ooh, like this is what I've been pushing away unknowingly. This is what has been keeping me feeling numb, feeling disconnected, feeling depleted and exhausted because I've been trying to be like what society wants me to be. I've been trying to be the good girl. I've been trying to be the perfectionist, the people pleaser. And we're freaking tired of it. Like I see this huge awakening happening, this feminine awakening where women are like, I'm done with that. I'm done with playing this role and being this version of myself that's not really who I am. And so there's a term that has come through for me that feels like it's so resonant right now, which is the name of my mentorship, which is multidimensional, like being a multidimensional woman, which has several different meanings. And I think this really ties into transcendent leadership too, which is like multidimensional, not just from the 3D, from the ego, from the tangible things that we're creating. It's like being connected to spirit, being connected to our intuition, being connected to all that is to the field. Like that's multidimensional to me. And then you've got multidimensional of not just being in one single identity. Like so many of us, including myself, have gotten stuck in the role of a business owner or a CEO or of a career woman or of a wife or of a mom. And it's like getting so singled in to like, that's my identity. And I was thinking of a really funny reel the other day where it was like, trying to fit my identity into an Instagram bio of like 250 characters. And I see this like wife, mom, like CEO. And I'm just like, oh my God, we're so much more than that. And so it's
Mm.
like, yeah, bringing in so much more of who we are as beings instead of like these characteristics that like keep us safe and like help us to figure out who we are. And finally, what I was sharing before is this like multidimensionality of not just wearing like the happy, pretty face all the time. I've got everything put together, but like the raw realness of like the tenderness and the sensitivity that we experience as women who have a monthly cycle, and the rage and the anger that we can feel sometimes, and like bringing that all online in a really sacred way so that we can be all of who we are. And yeah, that's what I feel like there's so much hunger for, and I'm feeling so much energy around that for women.
Yeah. As soon as I brought it up, I could feel your body light up. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this feels really alive for you and for the people that you're supporting and what you're like claiming and stepping into and meant to help people with in whatever way." But I feel it. It's so palpable. And I've gotten this vision of me because this is definitely something I'm moving into for myself. Like because I work with leaders who want to be multidimensional. A lot of my entrepreneurs, especially the men, are really claiming this within themselves. Like, I'm not just the entrepreneur, I'm a poet and I'm a fucking warrior and I'm a father and I'm a DJ and I'm like all of these things. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, hell yeah, own all of that. So it's happening for men and women. And it is so beautiful. And I've been working this part within me that's felt like I've still like attached part aspects of me to like the title of what I do. And in the most recent like 6 months, it's been like I get this visual of me being like a jaguar, like coming out of this cage that she didn't even know she was in and just being fucking wild. And what would it be like to be a leader who's leading people, but also is empowered in leading themselves by allowing themselves to be all that they are. Like I write erotic poetry and I never share it online. Like why not? And I feel all these things like I want to show more of me, not to be necessarily seen in it, but just to feel free to not have to restrict anything, any part of me, any expression. And so as you're saying this, I'm noticing I'm awakening to that, and just that transmission of the beauty of being all of you is like profound just in that. So
Mm.
really, really feeling that for sure.
Well, I hope you share your erotic poetry because we all know that the world needs more pleasure right now. And your writing is so phenomenal as it is. So I'm like, ooh, I wonder what this erotic poetry is. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so what I'm sensing is going to feel really good for the audience as well as even for me. I'm curious, what are some practices that you have that you do on your own or that you have clients do to really help people activate or access the safety within themselves so that they can be more free to express and then also kind of experience pleasure? Like, what are some of the foundational practices that you would offer some of the audience members? And maybe if it's one, if you want to dive deeper, just a couple that you think would be really supportive.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that when I say like safety is cultivated from within, it really is about being in the body. And a lot of the work that I do is around embodiment because our nervous system lives in our body. Our intuition lives in our body. Our truth lives in our body. And in our culture, we're so living from the neck up. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your audience has some type of mindfulness practice and are tapped in a lot of ways as well. And in general, I mean, I even find myself like it is a practice to keep coming back into my body, to regulate my nervous system, to create space to connect with myself. And to me, that takes daily devotion. It takes daily practice of having that quiet space, of getting into the body through connecting with your breath, connecting with movement, getting out into nature. Like it's a consistent practice of connecting with source, because we often outsource our safety and our security, like I was talking about, to other people. We also outsource our safety and our security to these like false identities that we have. And so it's like the more that we can connect to our true essence, to our true self, the more that we can get our nervous system into that regulated, grounded space, that's where we can cultivate that embodied safety within. And because we have so many distractions and we have such a like fast-paced world, we have to keep plugging in, like plugging back in and plugging back in and plugging back in. And for some people, that requires like going on a retreat and getting out of their home environment and really resetting to plug in. And then it's the like the maintenance of that. Right. So I would say, yeah, it all comes back to the body.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
share something really vulnerable actually. I feel this level of devotion that isn't essentially required, right? Because not only we're programmed to live there in our minds, but it is, when you're feeling you're in a survival state, right? You're constantly thinking about like, what am I going to do? How is this person perceiving me? Am I going to die? Right? It's kind of just how we're hardwired. So it's not even just programming. It's like we're literally hardwired to look for things to protect ourselves from constantly. And I've been in this deep devotional practice of being in prayer and also just creating pleasurable experiences in my day to day, like lighting candles and incense and really bringing my senses into it. And one of the things that I've resisted the most has been breath work. And it has had the most profound effect on my ability to be in my body. And I noticed the other day, so I'm openly dating and like exploring, relationships and like what that is like and what I want and really calling in my partner. And I recently went on a date with a guy the other day and we were kissing and we got into this synchronized breath, organic and natural. I can even
Mm,
access the moment right now in my body of like, I almost had an orgasm just from the synchronized breath with another human that's conscious that I feel safe with, etc. So I think that there's this narrative around pleasure practices or accessing deep states of joy that we think that we have to sit down and do something. And I agree with that. There is a practice in it. And how are you practicing it in every moment? How are you practicing it before we drop in this call? We're doing a prayer. Like it's taking these intentional spaces and moments to really do that. And I noticed that breath with him was so profound. It just reminded me of the simplicity of a lot of these practices and how we can so easily um complicate it all or want it to be super advanced that we overlook the inherent simplicity and necessity of these things that are actually foundational for us accessing these higher states of consciousness, etc. So yeah, as you were talking, it was like, oh yeah, breath is like so juicy and yummy, even with yourself, with another. It is like one of the it's like a medicine, it's like a drug, it's like a psychedelic medicine drug for me. And I noticed that most of my clients tend to be like me. They hold their breath a lot. And so they're constricting the energy flow and they're not really able to soften and surrender to even access safety to begin with. So I think you
mm,
sharing that is really helpful for our audience to really see that there's devotion and practice in where you sit down, but also how are you practicing in every moment, that it's all like intentional spaciousness, like really directing your attention and intention into everything that you do that can really support what you're sharing.
yes, breath is so powerful. And when you talk about cultivating safety, like our nervous system, when we're not feeling safe, goes into fight or flight, or it goes into freeze, right? And breath is what can help to cultivate more calmness, more groundedness in our nervous system, because like you said, we often hold our breath or it gets really short. But when we can elongate that breath, and not just like breathing longer, but the felt sense of like, ooh, what is the sensation of the inhale in my body? Like, how does that feel? Feeling the expansion in between your ribs, feeling the pleasure of the spaciousness that the inhale allows, like maybe even adding some sound to it where it's like an audible exhale where it's like a sighing of relief and it feels really good, or a sigh of pleasure, or like just releasing from the body through the breath is so powerful. And that's really where every embodiment practice starts, whether it's in yoga or in the feminine embodiment movement practices that I work with my clients. It's like it starts with the breath of like dropping in to self in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was like just getting hot talking about this, just feeling so good. And I want to talk more about, I know we got off on a little tangent, but I want to go back to the multidimensionality and the multidimensional woman. What do you think it means, like, as women start to show up in this way, why do you think it's beneficial? Like, talk about how the ripple effect of this could actually impact the world in a positive way, because it's like, okay, for the self it's really good, right? I feel free, I feel good, but also I sense that there's a larger context here around to how it actually fundamentally is going to shift the world. And so what does women coming into their multidimensionality have to do with the shift in consciousness? What does this ripple effect actually look like?
Yeah. Like when you're in that space of the old paradigm of, people pleasing and perfectionism and worrying about your body image and comparison and all of that, the energy that that takes up is so profound. I remember when I was living in that space 6 or 7 years ago, like 95% of my thoughts were either self-deprecating or fear-based thoughts. And when that's the case, it's impossible to have clarity. It's impossible to have creativity. It's impossible to feel connected to your pleasure and your joy, but also to your purpose. And so, all of that wasted energy that's happening, which is super low vibrational frequency, shame, guilt, judgment, fear, like it's a frequency that we're carrying. And we bring that into every interaction that we have. Now, it's not to say that you can't be successful or that you can't have a good life if you have fear or shame or any of that. But it's like, how much time are you swimming in that? When we claim our power and when we show up as our authentic self, and we're not so concerned about what are other people going to think about me, or like, am I going to disappoint other people, or we're just so focused on what does the external want from me. And when we're living in our truth, it creates so much space and freedom to focus outwards. And it's like, what do I want to create with that energy? And that creative energy is what we're here for. And as we start to elevate our consciousness and we elevate our energetic space and our capacity, that's when the clarity comes through and where intuition really speaks to us. And so I see this not only in the realm of purpose, but when you're living as your multidimensional self, whether you're a man or a woman, your presence and the way that you show up, people feel that. They feel inspired by it. You give them permission to be who they want to be. And it's an embodied experience of living that way and then serving from that way. And so
Mhm.
that's what I see. I mean, I see
Mhm.
everything shift, the way what women stand for in relationships, how they elevate the standards of what's available in love when they show up from this place, right? They're not settling for anything less. They're like, I'm going to be my full self and I want to be met in that by my partner. Like it elevates, like the relationship that I'm in would not be where it is. I wouldn't have attracted him into my world if I wasn't being my full multidimensional self.
Mhm.
And I think so it changes our love life, it changes our careers, our purpose, and really in our everyday interactions, the permission that it gives other people to be like, oh, okay, I see an example of what it looks like to be my authentic self. Oh, okay, that's actually possible. Okay, that's something to work towards.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm going to share something with you because it's actually a little edgy for me. I feel like this show is like liberating me of all these things right now. Well, let me
Right.
repeat what you're saying. So it's like, yeah, on one hand, on many hands. If we had 35 hands, we probably couldn't encapsulate all the things that it's going to ripple effect. But there's this invitation to rise and maintain. There is this space in which the energy exchanges that are naturally happening on a day to day are so elevated. There's the enhancement of connection. So it's like all of these things are changing. And one of the things that you mentioned was the permissioning, right? When somebody else sees an example of somebody being their authentic self, really embodied in their truth, it really can inspire or trigger some people. But also underneath that is the space in which you're actually going to be liberated, right? And I was looking at your feed the other day, kind of preparing and tuning into the energy of this show. And there's like a couple of photos that they feel like they're relatively recent of you in what is it, like a bodysuit, like a black bodysuit, I think, and you're really in your power, like upside down. And I love one that was like that. I was going to comment it on it after the show today because I was just like scrolling through it, and it really invited me to see an example of a woman sharing that online, and it inspired me. I was like, yeah, I'm really meeting some edges there around showcasing, or like not showcasing, but like just showing the things and like expressing me in the way that I
Expressing.
want to. The
Yeah.
expressing, right? Expressing and evoking and all of this. And so I'm curious if you're open to sharing what that's like an edge for me right now is being in that. And I see that you've met that edge. What are some of the edges that you're currently meeting in your own embodiment that you'd be willing to share with the audience?
Okay. I love this question. I think right now, what feels most alive and authentic is vulnerability and like messiness.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is that I'm still in the process of unraveling the layers of perfectionism. And one of the things that I've struggled with, and specifically over the last 4 months, I've been in a really big health flare up. And it's interesting because there's so many things in my life that are like feeling so amazing right now. And this health flare up is an external thing, like it's on my skin. And so it's something where it's like, ooh, like, can I really be seen in that? And can I let myself be seen in that, even though to me it doesn't feel attractive? And for the most part, it feels mostly uncomfortable and frustrating because it's like, oh my God, I've done everything under the sun, including like all the alternative methods, right? Including energy healing and acupuncture and all the things. And it's like, okay, like it feels out of my control. And so it's like, can I show up in leadership and be seen without feeling like I have to hide that or like something's wrong? Like there's almost like there's not even like a refinement of my expression, but it's like, ooh, can I let myself be seen in the messiness, in the areas that feel uncomfortable and where I feel self-conscious about them? And yeah, I feel like I'm always meeting new edges. I feel like at some point, I don't know how long ago, I came out of the spiritual closet and then I came out of the sexual closet. I'm like, yeah, I'm a sexual being. And I lived in like grew up in more of a traditional religious upbringing. And like, it's really like those are like some like the biggest, like, oh, okay, I've embodied those aspects. And then I think now it's just like these fine tuning and like continuing to work with my own wounds and my own edges of like what is vulnerable for me to share.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, that feels like an edge.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that.
Mhm.
I'm also similarly meeting that edge too. And what I'm hearing you say as well is like there's so much beauty in your life that you're experiencing, and then also some of the challenges that you're meeting from a health standpoint. And so, there's sometimes this experience that I have when I share on social media, like I'm like, oh my God, all these things are happening. Like I'm getting clients, I'm getting opportunities, et cetera. And then I share one thing and people are like, oh, don't cry. So it's sometimes I feel like this hesitancy because of the way that people are going to like pity me too, where I'm like, no, I'm good. And this is here too, right? This is here and this is here. So there's the messiness of can I be seen and show myself on all of this? And then there's sometimes the hesitancy because it's like you want people to see it, but also projections or their insecurities get thrown on you when you're kind kind of already in like a tender spot of sharing it as well. And have you
Mm.
experienced that? And like what is when you go to talk about it, if you haven't or you have, curious if like you're really showing up in that, what are you finding that's really supporting you and moving through that process?
Mhm. Yeah, I've recently started talking about it more, and I actually have a podcast episode going out shortly, which is speaking a little bit more about my experience. And I feel like whenever I've shared authentically online, like, yes, there are going to be people who project and who get triggered. Yet there's also so many people who feel like more connected to me and also who feel really grateful that I'm sharing in that way. And it makes them feel less alone. It makes them realize, like, okay, I'm human too. And so I, for the most part, feel met in that. And every time that I've shared really authentically and vulnerably, I feel like it creates space for safety for other people and also permission for them to be like, oh my God, like I can share when I'm going through a hard time. And I don't have to be in a space of being a victim about it or feeling disempowered about it, but like we're all human figuring this out together. So, yeah, I think you're always going to get a mixture of both. And I think that's the aspect of leadership that we get to tap into is like, okay, why am I sharing about this? What's the purpose of this? How is this going to serve people? And if we let that voice in our head of like, ooh, what are people are going to think? Or are they going to, make weird comments or are they going to project onto me? It's like, let's not focus on that. Let's keep our focus on, okay, what's the real purpose here?
I think that's a really
Hmm.
powerful question to continue to ask yourself when sharing of like, why am I doing this? Am I willing to perceive and be with all of it as medicine for us? And that's really powerful. And that is at the essence of transcendent leadership, really is rising beyond self and really tapping into the the love and the power that is always available to us and being seen in all of it. Like it's really the raw and vulnerable leadership that is going to shift humanity. And so I thank you for the work that you've done to be able to hold that within yourself and the work that you do to be able to support people and guide them to coming into their own place of empowerment within themselves to do that.
Mm, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I just can't see myself doing anything else. My soul is like, do this. I'm like,
That's it.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you here today, and I'm feeling just this enormous amount of gratitude and love and appreciation for you. And so, as we wrap up here, would love for you to share any last words that are on your heart. We've covered multidimensionality, we've covered community, we've covered a little bit of pleasure, and really stepping into the raw and realness of the imperfect, but also deeply perfect. Um, journey that we all walk. And so would love to share, what are you offering to the world right now that's open, and what are their ways that they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would say what's like most alive on my heart right now is that I will be releasing my first book coming up here in November. Got a very special release date, November 11th. And yeah, it's really one of those projects. I mean, it's been almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years by the time that it actually is birthed into the world. So it's been something that I've been like deeply immersed in and been in relationship with. And I'm really excited. And also, like, it feels so vulnerable to share writing in this way and to share my stories in this way. But I really love the book because there are so many practical aspects. A lot of women ask me, well, how do I connect with my feminine energy? Like, what are the steps? What do I need to do? And this book really provides that solution of getting out of that place of burnout and depression and depletion and coming back into connection with your feminine energy, which is connection to life, connection to the earth, connection to your soul, to your body. And I'm just really excited for this to be out in the world and for more people to have access to this wisdom. So, that's the number one thing that's really on my heart, and we'll be doing pre-orders for that come here in October. So yeah, I would say the best place to find me is on Instagram. You can find me at Amy Natalie Co, or on my podcast, the Feminine Frequency Podcast. We've had Carissa on as a guest, and I really, really loved that episode. So yeah, come on over and find me on the podcast. And those are the things that are most alive right now.
Well, I am just so exceptionally honored to share this space with you, and so like proud of you as a sister for putting your work out there and publishing a book and being so vulnerable and really offering this wisdom to people in a really accessible way. And so I honor the process that it's taken you to get to this moment of birthing this creation. And I can't wait to share it more publicly with my audience and really celebrate you in that way. So really, really seeing you and honoring you, and thank you for the work that you've done and are doing. And I really appreciate you.
Receiving. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, audience will all have the links in the show notes and whatnot so that you can access that information and that wisdom and really get connected with Amy in a way that's really accessible. So thank you so much for being here with us on this exploration of feminine energy and leadership. And we'll see you next week. Bye bye.